Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, the youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry, whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Paul Hamus. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. I don't know why I felt like I needed to
dance. You looked like dancing.
I was trying to call on my inner Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, which I never actually watched. Did you ever watch it?
I wasn't allowed to.
Really? Why not?
It was like apparently too violent for when I was a kid.
I have a friend. I was going to say I had a friend, but he's still a friend.
Nice.
I have a friend who, when he was growing up, he wasn't allowed to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
Because they called the rat Master Splinter.
Oh.
And his mom said, only Jesus is your master.
I wasn't allowed to watch Teletubbies because...
Did you just say Teletubbies?
Teletubbies. Because my mom had looked up and had made the observation that they were apparently worshiping the sun baby.
Oh.
It was like something she'd read online in the early days of the internet. And so I wasn't allowed to watch Teletubbies. Now, my mom, every time I make mentions about like things I was or wasn't allowed to do as a kid, my mom will text me that week and say, and like tells me why. She's like, back then I didn't understand what Pokemon was back then. I was just trying to do the best I could with the information I had. And so I'm going to get a text message this week.
So you can text Mrs. Paul Hamus at 717-663-48. I'm not even going to give the last two numbers. No, that's not.
That's a made up number, or is it somebody's number that you almost gave up?
Well, 717 is
the area code here.
727 is
you're right. What's 717?
717 is where I'm from in Pennsylvania. So check this out. When little back extra information. That's also should be
it should be a little like sound.
Yeah. So I grew up right outside, 30 minutes outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And the zip code, the area code 717.
Yeah.
I moved to Texas where the area code was 817. Now, there's a bunch of different area codes there in that Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. But the amount of times that I would talk to somebody and they'd say, hey, can you give me a number? And I would say 717. They would say, you mean 817? And I'm like, yeah, for a brief second there, I forgot my own number. You're right. I'm so sorry. Then I move here where the area code is 727, and so I still get it. So give me a number. 717? You mean 727? Yes, I totally forgot my number.
You went to two different places that were just one number off.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is funny.
Speaking of one number off, have you ever texted your number neighbors?
No, I never have.
Have we talked about that?
I know it was a big trend a couple of years ago, and I just never did it.
I have multiple times texted my number neighbors. Now, one of my number neighbors is my wife.
Okay. Because you guys probably
because when we got our cell phones the same day.
Yeah.
So then when we got both of our daughters' cell phone numbers, I really wanted for them to both be 717 numbers. I think they both are.
They let you pick your area code now.
They do, and both of my daughters' cell phone numbers start out 717, but one of them goes 448.
Oh, okay.
Or 48. I think maybe whatever.
And then doesn't follow up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so today we're actually going to do something different.
And now it's time for Small Group. Josh, Small Group is a time where we get together and we kind of just bring it down to what's happening in our lives. Maybe we talk about a funny situation or maybe even a hard situation. But it's time just for us to kind of get a little personal.
Yeah.
And I know some of them are like, dude, the podcast is over. Yes, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
No, that is not what's happening. Today we just thought we'd kind of pull in and just kind of share with you guys about what's going on in our lives.
Yeah. So to be frank with you guys.
Wait.
To be Josh with you guys.
Okay, I was going to say, can I still be Kyle?
You can still be Kyle.
Thank you.
So to be Josh with you guys, it's been a wild couple of weeks and months, and I'll try not to get emotional because that's silly to do on a podcast because I don't want to be crying in front of you guys for the rest of however long this is on the air and on a podcast. But it's just been like a wild time, and my wife and I were talking last night and trying to figure out where do we cut things down in our life because life is crazy. And we're doing a lot of ministries in our church, and there's another ministry that just started, and I was asked to be a part of it, and I said, yeah, of course, and kind of realized how much I was overextending myself. I don't have a solution yet on what I'm going to do with that overextension. I'm probably going to do that as well, but that kind of got me thinking as well about like, all right, what am I doing in my job that I might be overextending? And so I was like, hey, Kyle, let's talk a little bit. you guys noticed probably that we didn't do an episode last week, and that's just because things were crazy, and we didn't even say anything about it. And I was like, Kyle, should we just stop doing the podcast? Should this be our last episode that we're going to do today, and just say, hey, we're done with the podcast now, and just because maybe we don't have enough time for it, or but. See, there you go. Now we have the right music for it.
Yeah. I just saw how
that's funny
because it sounds like we're gonna end the whole show.
Yeah.
The plan is not to end the show.
And so that's the takeaway. Sorry, that's the spoiler alert. We're not ending the show.
We're not ending the show, but Josh, I think it's okay, and I think you guys would agree with us. It's okay to move to a different format of different things. Because Josh, the other thing is, and you said it. We're trying to figure out what to cut out. Well, we've talked about that already.
Yeah.
So. We could.
Yeah, the I don't want to do it episode, or I remember.
Yeah, so it's like how do we keep this thing running?
Yeah.
And you don't want to continue to talk about the same exact things. Yeah. But let's be honest. There's gonna reach a point. You all understand this. I'm staring at you when I say you all. I know you understand. You all. By the way, Josh, how can they watch potentially the last episode?
Man, there's a lot. I feel like we're like announcing, like kind of just throwing up everything that we wanted to announce. So all right. In that same vein, one of our plans is to actually move away from doing a visual podcast. So we've always had it on YouTube as well.
That's right.
We will still be releasing it on every other platform that we've released on.
Yep.
But the plan is for now, at least, we'll still be until I get it approved to move it off YouTube entirely, because there's people above me who have to make those decisions. This episode will be, we're doing this as a video episode. So you can still watch this episode on our Fellowship YouTube channel. But then in the future, if we do move off YouTube entirely, it'll just be on our audio versions. But then we might still be doing a video, like a YouTube, but it'll just be like a static image.
Yeah.
Just for now, we might come back and do video again, but it does add a lot of level to our production.
Well, and there's a whole lot more that's about to get dumped on your plate.
Yes.
A whole lot more of expectations.
Which we can't announce yet. It's actually a really exciting project. I know.
It's very, very cool. And,
but it is 90. Pray for me, genuinely. I'm going to be doing 90 videos over the course of 2.5 months.
It's been a long
talk about. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I move stuff around? And I was going to tell Kyle, hey, maybe we should just drop the podcast entirely. And I'm going to shout you out, person, Gideon.
Gideon. Do you remember Gideon's last name?
No, I don't.
But that's okay. We probably shouldn't give
last names.
Give his last name.
But nice. Gideon wrote into us in an email, and we get emails every so often, just a little encouragement, and it's really appreciated. So if you guys do want to email us, you can always email us at stackingchairspod@wol.org. But Gideon is a senior in high school. He works like the end of the day at a pizza shop, apparently. And he said he listens to our podcast every week, and he said one of the most important things that he does at his job is stack those chairs.
Stack those chairs.
Little italics.
I love it.
And but this morning I was talking, and I was like, yeah, I just don't. And that email came in at 10 o'clock last night. And it was just an encouragement to me and to us as we were talking, and we were like, you know what, let's change the format a little bit. So this is kind of an announcement. It's a small group of, we're going to change the format a little bit, make it a little more palatable for our work schedules, because we're very busy.
It's
genuinely.
Crazy.
And so are all of you guys, and we understand that, but we don't want to stop doing this.
Right.
And so we're going to move away from the visual element of it. I guess that's kind of like all of the announcement portion.
Well, and second of all, as we're looking at, we've tried to cover different topics every single week.
Yes, and that's the other part of this.
And I would say this again, much like in any youth group, for instance, at youth camp, because we say at youth group or at youth camp or whatever it is you're doing. At youth camp, I've had people, we stopped doing a purity night.
Yeah.
For a good number of years. Not because I don't believe in purity, not because I don't want to preach about purity.
You guys stopped talking about it, and you're like, because we just stopped, we changed our minds.
Whatever. You know what, guys? We were wrong.
Yeah. Obviously, that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's going to stop the podcast right there and go, "Where life is going off the deep end."
Which people have said in the past too, but
really,
yeah. I mean, people. Anytime you do anything, people assume that you're.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyways, we stopped doing a purity night, and I had different people come up to me and say, "Hey, why aren't you doing a purity night?" And I said, "Well, I think that's for counselors to have conversations with you. There are purity things we talk about.
Yeah.
But we kind of moved away, and I think that's okay. Last year we brought it back, and I did a purity night, and we talked about those different things. I can't tell you how much longer we're going to continue to do that before we find out a different format. But we've talked about several topics. You know, we joke about the idea that I talk about you should have a planning meeting.
Yeah.
But again, how many different ways can you talk about purity? I'm not saying that there aren't different ways, but essentially you're talking about the same things.
Yeah.
And so we talked about the idea of, you know, we would bring up topics and we'd say, but we already talked about that.
Yep.
But we already went over that.
This is the 75th episode. That's
75 episodes.
You know how
Josh,
hard it is to talk about 75 different things?
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that we're at that spot, but it's like, how do we keep keeping it fresh? And then Kyle will tell you our conclusion.
Right.
But like, how do we keep it fresh and talk about a new topic every week? And we had stuff that kind of like overlapped on itself a little bit.
And part of that does come from us bringing in different guests. And so there's some different topics that we choose not to talk about because we know we have a guest coming and we want to get their take. And so some of you guys send us ideas and we so appreciate those ideas. And I would say this, and my conclusion to Josh is I think it's okay to re-talk about some of those topics.
Yeah.
Because we talked about that specific topic in episode 1 or in episode 17.
Yeah.
And now we're on episode 75. And so slight change or tweak to what we're going to be doing is, number one, we're going to be going back over some different old episodes.
Yeah, we might revisit topics.
We've enjoyed reposting past episodes, but I don't think it's wrong for us to say, hey, let's have an updated view, or let's talk about this again to kind of go over that as well as with our guests. Second of all, we're going to start addressing some of the things that are happening right now in youth ministry. That are happening right now in this day and age. And I know some of you, when Kanye was in the news, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't need another conversation about Kanye. But can I tell you, your students are talking about it. I don't need another conversation about the Barbie movie. I need you to understand, we're not moving to only topical things. But I think, Josh, it is important because some people, in fact, even just twice today, I got phone calls or I got asked to step into an office and they said, hey, we value your opinion. What's your opinion on this thing? And I think Josh and I are going to be very, very clear, as we've been clear about the other things. A lot of it is going to be on our opinion. And we'll try to be very clear on here. This is what Scripture says. This is where our opinion is. But man, we've enjoyed talking to you guys and sharing our heartbeat and sharing our lives. And so just to kind of let you know that is where we're going. So as we've said before, we want to talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. So what's hitting your youth culture? What are the things that the students
happening in your youth group specifically?
Josh, the other day I was at a youth leaders training meeting, and one of the people that stepped up ran a little game where they shared, hey, do you know what this means? Do you know what this means? Do you know what this means? I want to do that on next episode. I want to say, hey, here's a couple different things. Do you, because I would be curious, do you know what those mean? And I'd be curious, do you guys know what those mean? Because this is the text lingo that your students are using.
Oh my word. So Matt, the other day, he said,
oh
he
my
told
goodness.
a story.
I thought maybe we'd be able to get through one.
So Noble, he says, he said, he's telling a story about a guy who like was in love with this woman for like 40 years and then like would ask her out, but she would always say no. And then finally, I guess they're in their 70s, they got married inevitably. And he said for 40 years, he had L Riz. And then at the end, he had W Riz. And all of the kids in our youth group were like floored by it. They were all laughing. It was like the funniest thing in the world to them that he said Riz unironically. And he said it ironically, but I think he was like trying to like put out his attempt at it. It was so funny.
So I don't think we've talked about this already, but did I tell you that at the Portion Conference, that was a great Portion Conference?
Oh yeah. Actually, you guys should sign up now. I know there's a deal going on right now. If you can sign up now, there is a small cost next year. And if you sign up now, it's free.
Really?
And if it needs a code, I'll double check that and we will we'll email us and I'll send you the code. So
really cool thing, and then I'll get into my funny story. Really cool thing from that Portion Conference. I got to talk about how are we equipping Gen Z to reach Gen Z.
Sure.
And asked my friend Tommy Sewell. By the way, Tommy, always welcome back on the podcast. But asked my friend Tommy Sewell of, hey, he studies this stuff, man. He reads books and books and books on the topic of Gen Z and culture things, just because he wants to figure out the best way to minister to them. And And so he gave me a lot of content.
Yeah.
And so I stood up and I said, hey, this is from my friend Tommy Sewell. Well, I then went to the DR and they said, hey, can you teach a session on reaching Gen Z?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, can I reuse this thing? I had a youth group that called me up and said, hey, for our youth group, could you come out and talk to our youth group about this? And I was just like, oh, my goodness. So like, and then I had a Christian school administrator reach out to me and say, hey, I wasn't able to make it to your session, but I had one of my aides that was in your session at the Portion Conference. And I was like, man, this thing. And so that Portion Conference, I'm telling you guys, you need to sign up for it. You need to check it out.
It is pretty
great.
great.
To get your team there.
Yeah.
We brought in a lot of incredible people and a lot of incredible content. And I can say that not because I put together the content for my thing, but I've had so many people ask me about that.
Yeah.
Funny story now.
Okay.
So there was like 3 guys there that day named Matt. And I thought it was your youth pastor, Matt. Yeah. And so I because he's referred to as the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
Is that because I referred to him as the Apostle Paul?
Yes.
In an episode. And
it's
so
a running bit
do?
now. Yeah. People
That's
bring it
awesome.
up at church.
So anyways, every guy that I met, I'd be like, oh, the Apostle Paul.
And they're like,
and they were like, okay, Kyle.
Dude.
I'm so sorry, Matt. I forgot what you looked like. Which means even more so, Matt, you need to be on this podcast. Does he still listen?
Yeah, he does. He brought it up. He brought it up the other day in our text. So we brought up the text group chat, and so he mentioned that we mentioned the text group chat in the group chat. It was like a weird inception text of the group chat. Wow. Yeah. So he was talking. He's like, you guys know that Josh talked about us in his podcast, and that was like, and then it got like unnoticed, and then someone else put up something that was happening in their life. And then we were all talking about that, and then we kind of like also mentioned, oh yeah, that was cool. Like, you know how it goes, and especially in a group chat like that, like it's gonna just like line up.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was thinking, there's gonna be a lot of people who are probably gonna listen to this. I mean, this episode's kind of just like it's small group.
No, I have something to talk about. But
okay.
We keep going.
But I was gonna say, you guys might just like get through these episodes and be like, what's the difference between the old episodes and the new episodes? And that's great too. But I was thinking about that.
That's my hope.
Yeah. I hope that is the case. I hope that we kind of land in a spot where it's like, what's the difference? But then we're not focused as much on the topical side of we have to do something different, or we can focus more on, hey, what are we working through in youth ministry? You're probably working through it too. Hey, what are we noticing in culture? You're probably noticing it too. That's kind of what we're hoping to move toward. Right. Yeah.
Well, and again, it goes back to that whole 1 Timothy chapter 4. Don't pay all this much attention to old wives' tales, fit only for old women. You know, there is an aspect of talking about culture that I think you can get wrapped up in that culture, that you can kind of get driven in that direction. That's not where we want to go. We want to talk about things and topics that are relevant to youth. Yeah. But can I tell you, there's a bunch of resources out there that I utilize, that I interact with, that I would challenge you guys to check out. Now, you have to understand everything's going to be skewed in the direction of their thing. Like, for instance, whenever I want to find out if a movie is good for me to watch or is good for my kids to watch, I will look it up on Common Sense Media. Okay. I will also look it up on IMDb. Yeah. Now here's the deal. IMDb and Common Sense Media look at it from 2 totally different perspectives.
Yeah. It's not even close.
No, but both of them give you and give me the information that I want. We want to kind of be a little bit of the middle road of those different things. We don't want to just talk about it from the world's perspective, but we also don't want to only talk about it from such a hyper fundamental direction. Not that Common Sense Media is hyper fundamental.
We're gonna have to give disclaimers.
Yeah,
like a list of disclaimers.
No, but seriously, like I think as we engage in those topics, I think, Josh, you and I come from a very healthy mindset spot of we know culture, but we're not so swayed by it that, but it's okay because this is what culture is.
Yeah. Well, and just like, any good youth pastor worth their salt is going to take culture and then match it up to what Scripture says, and they're going to hold to what Scripture says. Right. And that's where the good churches aren't being swayed by culture, and the churches that aren't following the Word of God are being swayed by culture. And there are things that, like in culture, where we can kind of understand things differently, but the Scripture stays the same.
So, hot topic question for you. Okay, hot topic question for you. I don't know if you ever see those reels or watch that different stuff.
I'm on TikTok.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm not. You get to watch the videos that I saw a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I showed you 3. Had you seen any of those videos?
All of those were on my TikToks 3 months ago.
You lie.
I'm lying.
Okay, so you see those churches that do they did the Barbie thing.
Yeah.
They do the Toy Story thing. They do that. Like, what do you think about that?
So like reaching into the culture and like doing something topical for your
But like
ministry.
so much so, but like at your church service where your pastor comes out dressed like, I'm literally asking your
Dressed like what?
Just like a Ken doll. I'm not.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. He was in like there was one
had
that
like the ascot on.
Yeah,
and
he was like in a box and stuff. So
that's I did not. Did you show me that one?
No, I didn't show you that.
Okay, because that one I don't remember.
No.
Okay, so that's. I guess it depends on the reference. Like, all right, if my pastor came up and was like making references to medieval TV show that was like took the
Game of
storm,
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. If he's making references to Game of Thrones, there's so much in Game of Thrones that like is obviously counter to what Scripture says. And I have plenty of friends who have watched the show and they're like, oh yeah, like we had to skip all the sexual content. Or I have friends who are like, oh yeah, I don't care about the sexual content. Like regardless of your stance on all that, I think bringing that in front of the church and saying, here's something interesting and making a reference to something that is just so overtly anti to what like God would hold as like well and good, I think gives a pretty heavy stumbling block to your audience.
I think it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I've shared the illustration where with the youth pastor that went around and talked to those young guys about
talking about movies,
a movie that they should not, I don't think they should have watched.
Yeah. Well, if you're referencing 50 Shades of Grey from the pulpit, that's one that I think everyone would be like, oh yeah, that's inappropriate, right?
Right. You would think.
So where do you start drawing that line of, so do you stay completely away from cultural references from the pulpit?
But that's what I'm asking.
No, and I mean, I think just like any gray area thing in Christianity and like our viewpoints on things, it's gonna vary widely, but I think we always have to keep in the back of our mind of what's going to be a stumbling block for the weakest brother. I mean, even Paul was like, I'll give up eating meat entirely if it means I'm not gonna have somebody stumble. And I think that's the scriptural, like, I think that the truth that we miss so often is we'll say, oh yeah, well, it's this movie, obviously I can't reference 50 Shades of Grey. And then as we go further.
Although you just did twice.
Yeah, that's true. But as we move further this direction, we start to say, okay, well, this show, Game of Thrones, that one's like not as bad as this one, and so I can reference this one. Or I can reference Dumb and Dumber because it's not as bad as this one. Or I can reference The Office because it's not as bad as this one. And you keep making your way down a spectrum, and then where's that line finally get drawn?
No, absolutely. And
we referenced The Office on this show we have before, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I know there's a bunch of people out there that are like, hey, I don't think you guys should reference that show because,
so where do you draw that line?
Exactly. And so that's where I bring up the topic of conversation. I would say this. I would say be willing to stand and to know that you are endorsing whatever it is you talk about.
Oh, that reminds me of a story once of I know someone, a department at Word of Life, where the department head was like, we should all watch a Christmas thing like in the office together. So he puts on an episode of The Office, a Christmas episode of The Office.
And it was really inappropriate.
Well, and you start to realize, oh my goodness, all of this is so inappropriate.
Yeah.
And it was a marker. I mean, obviously, like he apologized profusely and he turned it off. And he's like, it was a moment of reflection for him where he's like, oh man, like, do I need to start looking at my media in the sense of, if I showed this to everybody in my office, would I be embarrassed?
Right.
And I started to look at my media like that, and I've cut out. I don't watch a lot of TV shows that I used to watch because of that.
I remember I was over at a youth ministry event thing with a bunch of other college students at somebody's house. And the ministry leader got up and was like, hey, you guys want to watch movie?
Yeah.
And we were all like, yeah. And I was like, dude, I loved that movie growing up. I loved that movie growing up. And so he put it on and we were all watching, and like several different times, the dad of the household would come out and very loudly be like, hey, I just want to know, does anybody want popcorn? And we're like, you could have just asked, does anybody want popcorn? Like you didn't, or like somebody did something funny and he'd be like, and we're like, okay, little overdone. We didn't get to finish the movie. Okay. my girlfriend at the time, and one of my best friends, we're like, dude, we got to watch the rest of that movie. So we found somebody that we could borrow it from, went over to my discipler's house, and we're like, hey, can we watch this movie? And the wife was like, yeah, sure. Is it a good movie? And we're like, yeah, it's a great movie. We're just watching it last night at so-and-so's house. Bro, we realized that the guy yelled about watching popcorn over when somebody was swearing in the movie. And we totally forgot about it because when I was a teenager, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
And then there was a really inappropriate joke that when he laughed really, really loud over the first part of the joke, we did not. And so we're watching it with my discipler's wife sitting there and their child sitting there. And
how old was this kid?
I think she was like 7 or 9.
No,
and
that's
we're
the
just
worst
like,
age for
oh no, this is not. And so afterwards we got a stern talking to.
Yeah.
But
did you finish the movie?
I don't remember if we finished watching.
That'd be hilarious. She's sitting there for an hour and a half, just like, oh man, this is terrible. I can't wait to tell them how bad it is.
Bro, I remember one time, speaking of that, we rented a movie. This was in the 80s. We rented a movie and my brother and I watched it, and my mom and dad were like, yeah, this looks okay. And so
why didn't you just stream it?
I hate you. And so we started, they started swearing in the movie and then like swearing in the movie. And then it just kept on going. And so instead of turning the movie off, I proceeded to get a paper plate and write down all the swear words that they said and hashtag marks next to the amount of time. My mom and dad were like, why didn't you just turn off the movie? And we're like, that's.
See, now you're thinking too much.
Yeah.
No, but here's the thing. You're right. And we have to kind of, we can't just move past it and ignore it.
Right.
And I mean, there's been times where like my pastor now he's referenced movies before and I'm like, man, if I watch that movie again, I wonder how many things I would find in it. And I mean, he's not doing it intentionally to be like, he's not referencing the inappropriate parts of a movie. Like, but maybe it's time. Does time kind of blind us?
Oh, absolutely time blind.
Because I'm like, oh, that movie's like, all right, we're referencing a lot of the movies as we talk about should we reference movies. So it's kind of ironic, don't you think? I'll say there's a movie that I watched on TV as a kid, The Goonies, where if I watched it with my daughter on DVD today,
you would not
watch it with her. And so, but it's kind of like that, where it's like, oh, like that movie's from blah, 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 or like Sandlot. It's like that too. It's like, oh, that movie's from, and it's like, there's stuff that I wouldn't want to watch with my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
But you don't think about that stuff.
Right.
And is it because time kind of like, even songs, I know my brother-in-law has said to me before, he's like, he's like, it's country music. Country music's fine. And I'm like, that song that you're listening to right now references just as much sexual content as a song that, and I no longer listen to this music, but the song that at that time I was like, this song references just as much sexual content as this song does. And you wouldn't mind this song because it's country music and you were raised with country music. Therefore, in your mind, it's something that has been placated. Is that the word? It's kind of just been like dulled down.
Sure, why not? Placated is a great word.
I don't think it's the right word at all.
Well, Josh, we're not going to cut this out. We're going to allow you to sit in the moment.
No, it's to make someone less angry or hostile. So it's not. That's not really the right word. Anyway.
Wow.
And we don't cut things out like this.
Wow, Josh. How do you feel right now?
I feel? About like that.
It's been a while since you've used.
I haven't used sound bites.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no. So again, but you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. The other day I was referencing a show.
Yeah.
And I would say this. Do you remember when they used to do made-for-TV movies?
Oh yeah, that's like when I watched The Goonies. Right. It was on TV.
So you've got those different things. You've got to remember the context. You got to remember the situation. But I remember, and I think we've already talked about this, which is the title of this episode.
Yeah.
I remember getting together with a youth group that I was working with. I was not the youth pastor, but the youth group that I was working with, and there I was like, hey, let's all watch a movie. And those kids, I said, hey, you can choose from any of the DVDs in my collection. And they chose a movie, and I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. And I was like, wait, it is PG-13.
Yeah.
We're all 13. We're all older than 13. And I was like, okay. And I was trying to remember, and I was like, I don't think there's anything. And what I found out is everybody had already seen the movie.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, cool. Well, we watched the movie, and then the next day I got an email from a dad that was like, I cannot believe you watched that movie with my kids. And I said, your kids were the ones that but it didn't matter. I was the youth leader.
Yeah.
I was the one that was called to set the tone
You're a teacher in that moment.
I was.
Don't many of you desire to be teachers because you will be held to a higher account?
And I was not only allowing that, I was endorsing.
Yeah.
That kind of things. So this brings me to the last little tiny thing.
Yeah.
So the other night I was hanging out in my house and I could hear my daughter in the other room listening to a song that I feel like is a totally inappropriate song.
Yeah.
And so I went over and I knocked on the door and I said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And so she opened the door and I said, hey, I really need you to think about the music that you're listening to.
Yeah.
And she said, what are you talking about? Well, that made me even like more concerned. Yeah. I said, well, that song that you were just listening to. And she was like, Dad, and I was like, no, it's an inappropriate song.
Yeah.
She's like, well, but I said, no, if this is the stuff that you're going to listen to, like we need to have a conversation. You know, I respect you. I think very highly of you, but in this moment, I was really kind of discouraged and really kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
And then I walked away, and about a half an hour later, I was like, I didn't give her a chance to share her heartbeat. I didn't give her a chance to share why she was listening to that song, why she chose to listen to that song, what the situation was. Now, I think many parents out there would agree with me. If it's an inappropriate song, no, you shouldn't be listening to it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I didn't want to be so heavy-handed that I didn't give my daughter a chance to even like talk to me.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, okay. I said, well, let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk. And so I walked back in the room and I said, hey, first of all, I want to apologize. I feel like I came a little heavy-handed. And she said, I really appreciate that, Dad. I said, will you forgive me? She said, yes, I forgive you. I said, so let's talk about the song. Why did you choose to listen to that song? And she said, well, it was a reel.
Oh, it was an Instagram reel.
And I said, oh. So now, what's got me thinking, the question I wanted to ask you is, where do you go with that?
Oh, man.
When you've got a reel.
Yeah, or like a TikTok.
That's got a thing. Yeah. That the song in it itself is, because let's be honest, you get to listening to those bits and then you hear the next part of the song in a bit and you're like, dude, I want to listen to that whole song. Sure. And I'm now so comfortable with that song.
Yeah.
How do you combat that?
I think it comes down to, so when you did the Bible Institute, you had to do your biblical principles.
We actually didn't do that when I was at the Bible.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're that old?
Thank you so much, Josh.
Dang. Back then they didn't have like
we were just discovering Sanskrit, how to write hieroglyphics.
No, so when I went to the Bible Institute, we had a thing called biblical principles.
Yeah, you did your principles, philosophy, purpose program.
Yep.
Which automatically made you biblical people.
Wouldn't that have been great?
Would have been fantastic.
But I think having that for yourself is important. I have a friend who was like, "Hey, I'm getting rid of TikTok because it just doesn't have stuff that's like good for me, and it's also a huge time waster for me." And so, like, I mean, he's a dad. He has kids who are like, you know, in like almost middle school, like elementary age kids. Like, and he's like, yeah, just it's not good for me. And it's not good like time wise, and I'm just not going to be on it for now. And I respect that a lot. And I think the answer is not as simple as how do you deal with that, or oh man, you really got like stuck. Like maybe for you, maybe you need to sit before the Lord on every kind of thing that you input and everything you output, and say before God, do I need to let this go? And I mean, Jesus says, and it's hyperbole, and so, but he says, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And I have friends who have gotten rid of their smartphones and gotten flip phones, so that way they weren't tempted to look at things they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so I think the answer is more drastic than I'm willing to admit.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to say more than that because I don't want to convict myself yet. If I'm going to be frank with you and Josh with you.
And Josh.
Going to be honest. But I think the answer is a little deeper, and to say is like, okay, what am I going to do to get rid of those things, or where do I draw the line? And you have to prayerfully consider all of them. And I'm doing that with my life right now, not in the media that I'm digesting, but more so in the time that I'm giving to things.
Yeah.
Speaking of time I'm giving things, my wife's calling because she's came over here for lunch. So we should probably wrap up anyway.
Well, but that, I think, Josh, brings us back to this whole thing of, that's why I think it's important that we talk about these issues, because I know that there are youth leaders out there that, and please do not misunderstand me. I am not asking you, and I do not want you to say, oh, well, this is how Kyle and Josh feel about this. Therefore, I feel this way about this.
Yeah.
Or Kyle and Josh are okay with that. Therefore, it's okay for me to.
Could I also add, we're also working through this right now.
Yeah.
Like, we're also constantly changing and growing.
This is where it's a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
And we want it to be a conversation.
Give us grace just as you've been given grace. I mean, the Lord forgave you of a lot. We've been forgiven of a lot. So we have to be gracious with each other.
And so, again, we want to talk about some of these things because I know some of you are wondering, hey, where do you share that? The other dangerous thing, Josh, that we're going to have to understand is we're going to have to be very clear. Our opinion is not the stance of Word of Life.
Yes, and we will probably say that almost every episode.
Almost every episode. But having that topic of conversation, this is where your students are at. I am not endorsing that you go and watch all these movies so that you can go and be the one that shares. Oh, now I need to share with you my opinion. No, I don't need to. I don't need to do that.
Yeah, you don't need to. What is it? You don't need to get in the sewer. Jack Worson used to say, "I don't need to get into the sewer to know it smells bad."
Oh, really? I never heard him say that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't hear him say it either. He died in 1996, and I was born in 95. So.
Oh, I was born in 80.
Oh, so you definitely heard him.
I definitely did not hear him.
No?
Although he did come to my church and preach.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, because you were 16 when he passed.
Yeah, I was. Well, actually, no, I was only 15.
Because you weren't,
I was.
Because he passed away at the beginning of 1996, I believe.
I thought it was, anyways, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Just like on some weird tangent.
But again, I think that it's important to talk about it. Number two, I think it's important for us to constantly be understanding that, like you said, not many of you become teachers because you will be held to a stricter standard.
Yeah.
So yes, you need to understand that anything you talk about with these students, they're going to think you're endorsing.
You're right. You're 100% right.
And again, and we've talked about this before, but the whole idea of, hey guys, let me tell you all the bad, stupid stuff that I did. Don't go be like me.
Yeah.
They're looking at you going, you're here, you're cool.
And my parents said you turned out all right.
Yeah, you turned out okay. Therefore, it's okay. So that's why I tell my students all the time, you don't need to share with them what movies you watched.
Yep.
You don't need to share with them what music you're listening to.
What mistakes you've made.
The mistakes you made. To an extent, yeah.
Have discretion.
And so again, interacting with them, understanding that anything you talk about, you are endorsing.
Yeah.
Even if you say, hey, I did this, but you shouldn't go do this. No, you are still semi-endorsing that because hopefully you turned out A-okay. And
by God's grace.
And had those different things. But Josh, I'm really, really excited because I think this is going to open up some incredible new doors.
Yeah.
I think it's going to open up some different things. We're about to head into Pursuit Camp. By the way, if you are not signed up for Pursuit Camp, spots are running out. I need you to check that out.
wol.is/pursuit.
Yeah. Also, the Young Adults Weekend, that is a weekend for graduates ages 18 to 28.
wol.is/pursuit and go to weekend 6.
Yeah. Young Adults Weekend, there's a link, a landing page just for that. That is going to be built and designed just for young adults, graduates ages 18 to 28.
Are you in college? Do you career? You should come and young adult with us.
You should young adult with us and worship. Dude, there's some exciting stuff that we're talking about doing.
I'm stoked about it. I'm still petitioning to I told you what I think would be fun to do.
I know,
help with
but aren't you going to have a new Jedi in your house?
Yes. My wife is due in January, guys. So that's also why I'm stressed out. I'm rethinking life entirely right now because I'm
Do you college?
Overwhelmed.
Do you career? Do you life?
Do you life?
Well, then you should come and young adults with us.
Absolutely.
No, so I'm really, really excited about those things. So please, if you have a middle school ministry, high school ministry, check out Pursuit Camp. There are 5 incredible weeks to choose from.
And one weekend for you. Come as a youth pastor.
And then, come back as a youth pastor. In fact, I'm trying to figure out a deal that we can set up where if a young adult comes to Pursuit Camp,
bring 20, get one free,
that they can then come back for free to the young adults.
That would be awesome.
That's just for them. Yeah. So we're looking at that, headed towards summer camp. But Josh, a lot on our plates, a lot headed down this way. But this is something that we are committed to, that we want to make sure that we're doing, and we're doing with excellence.
Yeah.
And so, guys, thank you so much for following. Thanks so much for tuning in. For those of you watching right now, this does not stop us from putting up different reels and different little
and
clips here and there.
We'll give you more updates next week once we kind of iron out that. But it's not going anywhere. You can still listen. So hey, Gideon, special thanks to you.
Thanks,
guys.
Gideon.
If you'd like to write into us as well, just like Gideon did, you can do so at stackingchairspod@wol.org. We're going to talk about it if you email us.
Yeah,
so
we're going to talk about it. Check out the community page.
Yep.
That's still growing and developing, and we're really, really excited about that.
This format really well too.
I think it absolutely will, and I would love to even, Josh, figure out a way to do one live.
Oh yeah, well that's actually one of the suggestions from Gideon, and we'll talk more about it. But there's some cool stuff that we can work on here coming up. But,
I like that. I like that.
Anyway, guys, as always, check us out on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere. Stacking Chairs Pod at wol.org. Like, subscribe, and most importantly, stack those chairs.
Just like Gideon said. I love that he said stack
and he
those
did it. Yeah, so obviously he listens to the end.
That's so cool.
This little thing at the end after the music's end, this is for you, Gideon. Gideon, all right, special note to you, Gideon, if you're listening still. I don't think you realize how much of an encouragement it was to me specifically, because I was ready to cut the cord on this podcast.
Josh was ready to have the conversation of, hey, maybe we need to stop this altogether.
Yeah. But like genuinely, and then also people like Don Reichert and some of the people at our church who just have been an encouragement throughout.
Don Reichert goes to your church?
No, but he's messaged me and said like how much he likes this show. But anyway, we appreciate all you guys a lot, and we hope this is a blessing to you as it is to us. So.
The power of one email. We should talk about that.
We could. All right, go, stop sitting here listening to a podcast that's over. Go do something else, guy.
The show is over.
Yeah.
Why are you still here?
This feels like a 90s video game. Why are you sitting in the menu?
Well,
we're going to keep all this in right after the end, too.
That bit is from an 80s movie.
Oh, is it? That we're not going to reference.
That we're not going to yeah. But
all right. See you guys.